Hello. So today I will analyze a game I just finished. Now the reason why I'm analyzing this game is because I had this crazy idea. And I was a pawn, and there's just a lot of nice things in this game. So my opponent goes for e4, and I go e6, French defense. So my main opening is black. I used to be a car player, but now I'm a French player. My opponent goes for knight to f3, and I go e5 here. My opponent goes for e5, and here I go for bishop to d7. Now the idea of this move is simple. I want to go a6 and bishop to b5, exchanging off this light squared bishop. And there's some options, like let's say d4, a6. If you go a4 here, uh, then a3 is no longer an option here, and this square is weakened. If you go c4, then I will take and still get this. And if you go knight to c3 here, you block the c pawn. So I get the exchange. My opponent castles, I take, and the queen takes. I go c5, c3 is played, knight to c6 here, bishop to g5. Now, I could. Their idea is simple: is that if I go here, they take, win a pawn. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to play this move queen to b6, targeting this pawn, putting some pressure on this pawn. So my opponent responds with knight bd2. I go for c takes d4, and c takes d4 is played. Now, let's evaluate the position. I am down in development. My opponent's king is safe. But in compensation, when I'm fully developed, I think I will be better because of this backwards pawn over here. If I get to put a knight here, that will be very nice. So I go knight g7. My opponent goes for knight to h4. So, and here I go for h6. My opponent simply retreats here, and I go for a long think and decide to play this crazy move, which is g5. Crazy, right? g5, pushing this pawn here, weakening all the light squares, pushing a pawn here, which is going to be available for the attack here. It's crazy. With a simple idea of just putting my knight on f5. I really sacrificed king's safety just to put a knight on f1. But my opponent is also crazy and plays g4. Crazy. g4. You see, when I played knight to f5, if they were to go for g4, there would be a provocation. But now I'm just gonna put eternal pressure on this pawn, put my bishop on e7, and but my opponent goes for g4, knight f e7, knight to b3 here, and I knight to b3 with an idea to go to the c5 square. So I put my knight on g6, controlling some of these squares here, so that at least my knight defends some of these pawn breaks here. And my opponent goes for knight to c5. I take, he takes. I go here, and my opponent just blunders with a3. No idea what that move does. I guess to go for b4, but I take the pawn. Takes here, and now they're threatening to play some bishop to d4 to pin it to my rook and a double attack. So I simply retreat the knight to g6, bishop to d4 is played, and here I play another crazy move, which is castling. Castling. Well, I castled and I pushed these pawns. But I can also start my own attack on their king because of this g4 move they played. So actually, let me just evaluate this. 2.2. I wonder if the best move was castling. It was. Anyway. My opponent goes for b4. b4. And the idea is to maybe break on the side of the board. And now let's evaluate the position again. So, let's count the material. I'm a pawn, but it's knight versus bishops. And they have a queenside majority. But I also have a passed pawn here. And I have two center pawns for my opponent's zero, but they do have a flank pawn. But other than that, I'm better because of my pawn advantage, and my king is not going to get targeted because my knight controls these key infiltration squares for the queen to get in there try and checkmate. So I go for rook a e8, setting up f6 to block off the bishop completely. My opponent goes for queen to f3 here, and I immediately go for knight to f4 here, just putting my knight on this nice square. My opponent goes for rook a e1, trying to play this move, bishop to e5. So I play e5 myself. My opponent goes bishop to d2, and I go d4. And as you can see, I have this nice passed pawn here, and surprisingly, my king is safe after playing h6 g5 in the opening. H3 is played. I go f6, and the reason why I go f6 is because if you look carefully, knight against bishop. Against a bishop, you really want to make sure the bishop is only staring at pawns that are well defended. So if I put all my pawns on dark squares, as you can see, the bishop is doing nothing, and my knight is immediately better. Here, my opponent goes for bishop to c1, and I take my best opportunity to simplify with queen to c6 here. Now, if you just move the queen, then I get the best move is to retreat the knight, I guess. But best move is this, giving a check. I have to go here, take, and I'm a pawn. But the reason why I think my opponent will take is because it spoils on my pawn structure here, which is exactly what happens again. Bishop takes f4, g takes f4. Because if I went here, then this pawn is drastically weakened, and I lose the pawn, possibly the game, because of my garbage pawn structure here. So I take with this pawn, and this is another evaluation position. So we have now reached the end game. Two rooks. Rook endgames tend to be drawish, but I have a passed pawn, so those drawing chances drastically decrease. So f3 split. I go for king to f7, trying to put my king on the d5 square. My opponent goes for rook to e4, just putting some pressure on these pawns here. So I go for rook to b8. Now the idea of rook to b8 is simple. It's to stop their counterplay on the queen side with the a4 and b5, because I was really worried about this because I only had two pawns and they had three pawns, so I had to make sure I stopped their counterplay. But at the same time, I also had to make some play of my own because I don't want to be passive. So I put my rook on the d file and on the b file. I go for king to e6. My opponent plays king to e2, and I play this move rook to b7 with ideas of rerouting my rook here. This is a flexible move. I can put my rook on the g file, go for this breaks in the future. My opponent goes for king to d3, and I go king to d5 to prevent the king from going to the c4 square. So my opponent plays rook to c1 here. Rook to c1, possibly with the idea of going here, but also when their king moves, at least my king cannot infiltrate. So I played this pawn sacrifice. Wait, not yet. Rook to g8 first. Oops. Rook to g8 with an idea to set up h5 and then infiltrate through this rank and take all their pawns. They go h4, and I immediately play h5 without calculation because because I only had 5 minutes in the end game. I don't want to spend too much time, and it just looks appealing to me because I can go here and also just put my rook on the h file. So it just looks very appealing. So I didn't spend much time thinking about it. My opponent goes rook to g1. I go takes. Here my opponent takes, and it, the, here it looks like they just have two connected passed pawns, right? Against my three, but minor well blocked, right? So now they're stopping f5. But now I just go f5. It still works because the rook is on this pawn is underpinned, because if you take you resign. Because I just take your rook. So you can't do that. Instead you go here, and suddenly when before you take, key moment here because they're gonna try to go here. I give this check first, and then take. If you look carefully, I have four pawns on the enemy's fourth rank here, and this is just losing. And I'm up two pawns. Count the material. I have six pawns against my opponent's four, and only one of them is passed, but it's weak. My opponent goes for king to b3, trying to get some counterplay on the queen side. Now you see why rook to b7 is an effective move, because it stops this. And also, I can maybe put my rook there in the future, but I never did. So f3, rook a1. I go for g3, and this is the winning plan because g3, and now g2 is threatened. So let's just say you place a random move. I'll play g2, and if you play this, I just go for f2. So you're losing. So, and also, reason why I played this move was because it comes with tempo immediately threatening a fork. And here, now they stop this, but because I have two other pawns, I can support that. So pro. That is the pros of having four passed pawns and they're connected. And I just win the game. My opponent tries to go for a6, but I like to stop my opponent's counterplay when I'm winning, instead of just playing the winning move immediately. Rook to d1, I queen, and here I sack and then play rook to g1, completely winning. And here I forgot I could queen. I just played this, but still winning. h7, queen to c4, and here I just take the pawn. This move is forced, and I just played b4, a silent move, forcing king to a5. It ultimately ends with queen to b5. Checkmate. Definitely crazy move there. I think my favorite move was definitely this g5 move. I know the engine doesn't like it. Oh, just the second line of the engine. That's nice. But it's just such a crazy move to play when you haven't castled yet. Look at this. Even if I get the castle on the queen side, the problem is they can put both rooks on the c file, and c and b files, and I'm gonna go into master attack. And then correctly evaluating. Wait, sorry. That after castles, then my king is safe. Look at this. King is just safe. While they have this nice bishop. Well, because my knight is defending, I have I always have this constant threat of the passed pawn, is what, which is why my opponent didn't get to attack much because of my nice pawns. So that's the end of the video.